Welcome to the Vault Exhale. Thank you so much for joining me. Live now from Fox is the source. The defense team for Mr. Kohberger wanted the grand jury indictment to be dismissed, and also cameras will be allowed in the court proceedings in this trial. The judge denied the defense's request for dismissing the indictment. Let's hear what the information is pertaining to this dismissal that did not take place. Amen. And yes, I'm very happy that cameras will be allowed in the courtroom. I'm sure many people would like to see the demeanor of Mr. Kohberger, hear the evidence, hear the people testifying, see the people testifying, get a general idea of what is going on instead of having it repeated, verbatim by court reporters brought back to the news. Thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $BigAngie129 Cash App, stickers and chats are welcome during the live stream. Live now from Fox is the source.
This has to do, of course, with the Idaho murders, another story that we've covered extensively as well. I want to bring you an update on that today as Bryan Kohberger, the man who's charged with killing 4 university students at Idaho in a gruesome attack nearly 1 year ago now. It's hard to believe it's already been that long since this tragedy occurred. While he was back in court today for a pair of hearings, his defense team attempted to convince an Idaho judge to throw out the indictment against him, alleging grand jury bias, inadmissible and insufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct. They also talked about the idea of having cameras in the courtroom. There's been a lot of back and forth on that as well. And for the very latest, to kind of help us get a better understanding here, we want to bring in attorney Nicole DeBoard, who often joins us when we talk about the Idaho murders case. Nicole, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So let's first just begin with the defense for Kohberger looking to dismiss this indictment. The judge denied that motion, but kind of walk us through what they were thinking. Is this a pretty routine move in a major case like this?
It's really not so routine, but it is good work on the part of the defense team. It is extremely thorough. This defense team went all the way back to the grand jury phase of this indictment and challenged the idea that the grand jurors did not receive the proper instructions about the burden of proof that they would have to consider in issuing the indictment, and asked that the court overturn the indictment and essentially send it back for preliminary review. And the judge felt that the state of the law as it exists now did not allow him to do that and denied their motion.
So when it comes to a defense team trying to present a case in that way, do you think oftentimes it's more often that the judge denies a motion like that, or sometimes do you see that happen where the judge agrees with the defense?
Sometimes the judge will agree with the defense, and the reality is that a good legal team, a lawyer, is supposed to take a very close look at all of the law as it applies to the case, and these lawyers are doing just that. And even though the judge may deny certain motions, the lawyers still want to make these types of challenges. It's not a question of whether or not they're going to win the challenges. It's a question of whether or not they're going to actually make them and put those challenges into the court record. Because if the prosecution is successful in this case, one thing you can be guaranteed of is that there will be an appeal. And so the only things that can be considered in an appeal are things that are brought up into the court's record. And so that is why the lawyers did this and do what they do. They want to put challenges forth for the judge, force the judge to rule. And even if the judge doesn't rule for them, a court of appeals can later take the issue up and consider it themselves.
And it's interesting, too, because today the 2 hearings, the first one, no media was allowed inside of that one. So we really didn't know what had happened there. And there's also this gag order that we talked about previously as well, things that people are speculating about, obviously information that really hasn't been made public yet. So when it comes to some of this information, such as this hearing that happened earlier today, such as the gag order, when do you think that the public might be able to get a better understanding of some of those details?
I think that the court is very methodically moving through each of these motions. And it does appear that right now, the judge is going to, for example, let cameras into the courtroom, but keep control over what is happening with those cameras and set forth certain guidelines as to what can happen with the use of cameras in the courtroom, for example.
Sure, and I want to talk about that next, actually, because today we did learn that cameras will be allowed in the courtroom, but the judge will be very in control over the use of them. So how do you interpret that? What does that mean?
I think that the judge is concerned about the points that have been raised by the defense about the use of cameras in the courtroom, and quite frankly, the points that have been raised by the prosecution. This is an interesting case in that even though the defense and the prosecution agree that cameras should not be in the courtroom, the victims' families want cameras to be in the courtroom, which is an interesting consideration. And by and large, courtrooms are supposed to be public. Proceedings are supposed to be public. The public is supposed to know what's happening in our courtrooms across the country. And the judge has to very seriously consider the public's right to know. But the judge also has to carefully make sure that no constitutional right of the defendant is being limited because of the way cameras are being used or because of the way the case is being reported throughout. In other words, all of what happens in that courtroom should be based on evidence and decisions which are made in the courtroom and not based on things that happen outside the courtroom. One concern you may recall is that the defense raised is that, as you can see here, cameras are picking up what is going on that defense lawyer's computer. We have to take certain precautions when we're in the courtroom to make sure that a defendant can communicate with his lawyer effectively and that what the lawyer is working on can be done so with the confidentiality so that the lawyer can communicate with the client and make sure that he's communicating with her in a way that it is not broadcast to anyone, including the other side.
Sure, and Nicole, obviously there's been so much, as I mentioned right when we got into this interview, it's hard to believe that it's already been nearly a year since this horrific incident happened near the University of Idaho campus, and we've heard a lot of evidence since then against Kohberger, the phone records, his white Elantra, his DNA on the knife sheath under one of the victims, most notably. It really seems like there's a strong case here. So I guess when you look at what comes next, both what comes next and also what you think could be most compelling in terms of the evidence for the prosecution and also what the defense's best argument might be, kind of a couple different angles here that we're throwing at you.
Sure. I mean, I think that the most compelling evidence is going to be having witnesses tie all of these pieces of information together for us. Some of them seem pretty obvious on the surface, right? The cell phone records, the vehicle information, just the fact that we know he was in the area, or at least we believe we know that. But hearing witnesses come and testify, or about blood evidence, about the various forensic evidence which was taken from multiple scenes. All of this will paint a picture that I think, as you've already pointed out, is going to be extraordinarily difficult for the defense. But I suspect what we'll hear from the defense is that
Sorry about that. Audio's breaking up.
There were pieces of this investigation used ineffectively or worse, wrongly. And at the end of the day, that's what the defense is going to be trying to do, is chip away at the things we think we know or that the state thinks that they can prove.
All right, again, Kohberger facing 4 charges of first-degree murder and a felony burglary count as well. And if he is convicted, the maximum penalty could be death, possibly by firing squad. So it'll be interesting how a lot of this kind of goes along from here. But as always, Nicole, we thank you so much for joining us today. A lot of big developments in this case as well.
Thanks for having me.
Live now from Fox is the source. So Mr. Kohberger is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder, felony burglary, breaking and entering into this home and murdering these 4 kids, 4 Idaho University students. Cameras will be allowed in the courtroom. Judge has denied the request for this indictment to be dismissed. A lot of legal wranglings and talking, much I don't know much about. But obviously the defense feels as if there was there were improprieties done by the state. They didn't show the burden of proof during the grand jury proceedings, which I don't really understand all of that. Is it that you're supposed to say it when you're presenting the evidence? What was the evidence that they took before the grand jury, the state? I'm assuming the DNA on the sheath. That information came back, and it puts Kohberger at the scene of a crime. Now, although there was no weapon retrieved from the scene, his DNA is on the sheath that holds a knife, and assumingly the knife that was used to kill the kids. Advantage points from the cameras, what they can see and not see, zoom in on. You hear this lady speaking about his rights to a fair trial, being able to speak with his attorneys in private, no information getting leaked out, repeated, gag order in place, asked to preserve the evidence in this trial, and once again give this man a fair shake of a trial. Family members wanted cameras, so the judge has allowed this to go forward, to have cameras in the courtroom. I would assume the defense would want them as well. Why not? And as they say, it is the right of the people to know what is going on in the judicial process and in the courtroom. Of course, most arrests are public in this United States, so why not have cameras in the courtroom? That way nothing can be misconstrued or misprinted, misspoken. Because you can always go back to the audio and the video feed to say, oh no, he said this, she said this. What I find interesting while listening to this commentary from Fox, watching Kohberger sit in the courtroom with a lawyer and then another lawyer, two females now. He's on the end. A dark-haired girl is in the middle, female. She's shorter. And then there's the main attorney, the blonde-haired lady. And I always thought it was strange having this woman defend this man who has killed some women and one guy, 3 women and 1 guy, the motive behind the murders. And then he gets this lady appointed to him who is a blonde-haired female. 2 of the victims had blonde hair. I thought, how could you sit by him? Which I know this is your job, but still, how could you sit beside this guy that 9 times out of 10, you know in your heart and your mind that he did it? But naturally, you can't say that out aloud. And now we got another beauty sitting in between, a dark-haired beauty sitting in between she and Kohberger. Kohberger looks over to the dark-haired girl. She's in the middle, gives that fake smile where he's clenching his jaws to draw up a smile. It's creepy as hell. But just the thought of sitting by this man knowing he butchered these kids. And then you all have the nerve to come into court and talk about improprieties and the grand jury not, getting the full scope of evidence or whatever. I don't really know what they're talking about. Because as I said, I don't know nothing about grand jury proceedings and what they're supposed to bring forth by the state, how they vote. But I'm looking at these people sitting in the courtroom with him, and it's creepy as hell. Because he killed some women. Allegedly. And so far, no one has said that either parties knew each other. No relationship, no crime of passion. Which somebody said he said that. One student said that in a conversation. Don't know if that conversation really took place or not. And then you can question that if it was true. How could it be a crime of passion? You didn't even know the victims. You only knew them, what? Through social media. That's not knowing somebody. That's not even really knowing of them. Because you still never met them officially, Mr. Kohberger. But it's baffling watching these women sit beside him in court, knowing he has murdered women. Very, very scary to me. And I told myself, I believe it was yesterday, I said, what if he just spazzed out in the courtroom while sitting next to Miss Annie and just jumped up and started beating the hell out of her, choking her? What would everybody do? Go run, scream, holler, oh my God, he's got a hold of her. He's beating her. He's choking her. And everybody's trying to pull him off of her. Think about that for just a second. This man, if we believe he is the perpetrator of the crime, he has anger issues, bitterness inside of him. And yet he's sitting beside a dream team consisting of women. Imagine that. It's almost like a joke, a cruel joke, some would say, that maybe would be in favor of Mr. Kohberger. How cruel is that to have women sitting beside him to represent him? Well, allegedly, the state says Ms. Taylor is the best one to do the job. Nobody else could fit the bill. My. Yes, it'll be very scary. Because I know they know he did this. And I'm assuming that the evidence the state took before the grand jury was substantial enough for those people to say, yay, press forward. And then you don't know what else they have against Mr. Kohberger. As you heard this woman speaking in this commentary, blood, CCTV footage, spotting of the car on CCTV footage, data pertaining to Mr. Kohberger, iPads, computers, conversations, eyewitness testimonies. So you don't really know what else is out there, what else they have. And we also got to pray that anybody that is supposed to be called as a witness will also follow through and testify. Because you know that in trials pertaining to crime, at the very last minute, people won't even show up to court, won't make the flight, nothing. Turn off their phone, change their number, voila, disappear. So we have to pray that whoever has any information, brought forward any information, pertinent, truthful, factual, will testify during the court proceedings, because it will be very, very disturbing if they don't testify. So that goes to the girls at the house, the two remaining roommates that were there allegedly. Will they testify? Will they give an actual factual account of what they did that morning up until finding the bodies, discovering the bodies at the house? As far as the house, will it still be remaining by the time Kohberger goes to trial? That's another issue. And I thank God that the university did not demolish the house, because I feel like the jury panel should be able to go to the scene to get an idea of how the perpetrator entered the house, surveyed the house, the layout of the house, and also how he or they exited the house, if indeed there's more than one perpetrator. And that goes hand in hand with this information. Are we still dealing with only one perpetrator? One man was speaking in commentary I played a while ago who acted as if, we thought he was some superhero, Kohberger. Last I checked with true crime, there have been many single perpetrators. One perpetrator, no plural. The one guy did all the killing by himself. No help, no nothing. So why it can't be possible in this situation? He chose that time for a reason, that time of day. And that's usually when people exact crimes such as this. When a person's defenses are down. That is when you're sleeping. They don't break in during the day. They don't break in when they see a crowd of people outside on the lawn or going in and out of the door. No, he lied in wait. He went in, however, whichever door, went floor to floor, killing these kids, and then he exited out of there and went and got in his car. Where was the car parked? I don't know. I won't doubt it. He parked it right in front of the house. The fact that he was circling, they've got that on camera, because how would you know he was circling? Oh, that's right, data perhaps. Because he was playing with his phone. Phone on, phone off. Returned to the scene at 9-something in the morning. So that means he probably didn't even sleep after killing these kids. Probably didn't get no rest. 15-minute drive or less. He's up in a few hours after killing the kids, driving way out in the middle of nowhere to discard of his clothing, items, weapon, and then go lie down, maybe wash up, or just went straight to bed. Who knows? But I don't know of the improprieties that the state exacted in this case, misconduct, the word that was used here in this commentary, what misconduct did they exact? What does the defense think the state did wrong or inappropriately? What did they not tell the grand jury to do? In the end, it was those 12 people or 6 or 7, however many people made the decision to indict Mr. Kohberger on what the state brought forward. I'm assuming they brought substantial evidence. And that's the whole point of the story. We're not going to know everything that the state has against Mr. Kohberger. There still may be more evidence out there to bring forward. Because when you're dealing with someone who has no inkling of these people, don't know them, you don't know who he's talked to, what he has said, what he has done. And as I said before, I won't doubt that he was stalking these kids all the way from the East Coast, that he is that sick and depraved. Because we heard this rumored first of this year that there was a possibility that he stalked the girls for a year or more. And common sense would tell anyone who has followed this content, he wasn't even living in the state of Idaho or the neighboring state for only a few months. So how could he be stalking them for a year physically if he wasn't even in the jurisdiction? So that means he could only have been doing it virtually, living somewhere else, which is Pennsylvania, or somewhere in between Washington State and Idaho. And that's the scary part of it. It's one thing to be stalked by somebody that you know of, passing, co-worker, neighbor, close vicinity. But it's creepier if the person has never even met you, passed you, heard you talk, brushed up against you in a crowd. They're all the way on the East Coast, scrolling Facebook, IG, TikTok, bored out their mind, and becomes obsessed with a photograph or a video. And I won't doubt that's what happened here. He crossed the paths of these young ladies via social media, became detached from reality, immersed himself in a delusional state, and applied to school close by so he could be near these young ladies. Won't doubt that he's traced classes, job sites, the home, of course, on King Road, and then lost his damn mind and perpetrated this crime. This is why I talk about social media a lot in my commentary, because it's a prevalent thing, such as what I'm doing here. I'm using a social media app, which is YouTube, and using a streaming app to bring you information. And people depend on these apps for daily use, for entertainment, information, so on and so forth, or to just be messy as hell. It's a dangerous tool. All of this, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, IG, messaging apps, WhatsApp, Messenger, it's all the same. It's dangerous because you don't know people. People are getting hacked. People are being lied on. People are being misused, manipulated, conned, all because of somebody behind an app. And this is why you have to be careful about posting things, which you'll hear in my commentary in my last video pertaining to the Watts murders and the interview of the babysitter. Sometimes people become immersed into social media and they become lost in the posting, always having a comment, always having something to say, always a rebuttal, always going live, showing personal things, photographs, their home, locations, family pictures, showing people in the background, maybe without their consent. You have to know when to fold. As they say in the street, you have to choose your battles. Social media is one of those battles that has gotten out of control because man designed this for entertainment purposes, ways of communicating with people, and now it has gotten out of control. And these children may have lost their lives because of a damn app. And that's a lot to digest because you can be stalked without an app. The person could just see you at the Piggly Wiggly or coming out of a government building or a work building and become fixated on you. But with the app, these people can track you and don't even live in your jurisdiction. They could be 3 states over. But because you are posting where you're from, you're posting things in the background, your location, you foolishly put up there where you went to school, on your Facebook, where you're from, where you currently live. God forbid you put your workplace. You have just handed a sadist an avenue to get to you. This is why I tell people on social media, you do not need to tell people what city you live in. You do not need to post your job title and profession and where it is located, the name of the company. Why? And you'll hear some people say, oh, I don't care. It's no big deal. I don't have anything to hide. Maybe you should. Because the smallest detail of a video, a person will know where you're at. You go live in your living room. You do it so many times and a person just assumes, oh, that's their living room. You could do it in your bedroom. Oh, that's their bedroom. You start talking about where you went that day, how far the grocery store is to your house. Well, now a person can use deduction once they know what city you're in. Stay woke. People do not think. And it's sad to say we have older people, such as people in my age bracket who are guilty of posting too much, saying too much, doing too much on social media, that you can't tell the younger person from the older person. Either party is mimicking the other. The older want to be young, the young want to be older. Two fools. Just foolish behavior. And these children probably never thought about nothing and having their fun, living their life, posting to social media, going to class, going to work, lollygagging around, bebopping around, just doing them. Little did they know somebody was lying in wait the entire time while they're out living their best life. And that is the sad part about life, is not knowing when you're going to leave here. If you're going to leave here from a sickness, an illness, you get hit by a car, you're in a car wreck, overdose, drank too much, or murder. Watching the videos of people is creepy. Showing these videos of these children, Kaylee playing with a dog, it's creepy because you know she's dead. The infamous photograph of all of them on the bottom level outside, and only 2 are living from that photograph. That's very creepy. That is the creepiest thing about true crime, is watching old live streams, TikTok videos, social media posts, especially near the time of death. And you're wondering, what were they doing? What were they thinking? What happened? Did they get a premonition? As I brought you the content earlier today of Bella talking about her sister dying from eating nuts. Why would a child even be saying something like that unless it was put in their head that the other child could die from eating nut products? And then 2 days later, the child and her sister are snuffed out by their own father, Mr. Chris Watts. Do you see where I'm going with this? The omen was in the room with the child. While the father's allegedly away at a Rockies game, the babysitter's here listening to 2 children play, laugh. One falls asleep. The oldest one is upset because the baby has gone to sleep. And she's talking about death and peanuts. Stay woke. What were these kids doing before death? Well, lo and behold, we have CCTV footage of a food truck and two girls out getting food before making it back to King Road. And little did they know, somebody had been up probably all night trying to figure out how they were going to lay this crime out, get away with it. And while they're having fun, bar hopping, eating food, going home, this creep has been circling their drive for God knows how long, waiting on the perfect opportunity for them to settle down for the night, the early morning, and then make his way into their home and violate them in the most cruel way. And their friend, Mr. Ethan. He was just a casualty of war, was he not? There with his girlfriend. And even now, we still don't know who he really wanted dead. The object of his obsession, fascination. Because one would say, well, why he had to kill all of them? Well, he didn't have any business in the house, period, to kill one, let alone four. But as Miss Kessinger would say, Miss Nicole Kessinger would say, it was damage control. Kill one, got to kill them all. But then that can't be true because two are alive. Two remaining roommates. So you can't even say it was damage control to kill everybody in the house because two are alive, and that still weighs on many people. Why do we have two alive and four deceased? Make it make sense. What do they know? Did they tell the whole truth? Will we find out down the road that somebody had knowledge of this guy, talked to him, dealt with him? I hope not. Because that's a heavy burden to carry, that you would orchestrate and or conspire with somebody to murder your friends. And I'm not here to say that these kids did anything of the such, but just saying that would be a hell of a burden to carry, because you have to know that karma will come back home. And I'm sure in many people's minds, they're trying to lay it out how it all happened to only have two surviving and four deceased. He went and searched for one, but found two. He comes down the stairs and bumps into Ethan and or the girlfriend. Somebody starts screaming, running. Now I got to kill these two. So then the obvious question is, you had to have known how many people lived in the house because you watched the house. You saw how many cars are in the driveway. You had to use deduction because you've been watching these kids. You've been watching their social media pages. You see the photographs. You see who's all in the photographs. So Kohberger had to have known who stayed in the house, and that means all of the females, which would be 5. He had to have known that. No way he did not know. So we have every right to question why there are 2 remaining people alive. And naturally, they may not ever be able to explain that in a court of law. I don't know why I'm living. I really don't know why they're deceased. But I'm surely betting they are very thrilled to be alive. This is a very diabolical story. And it's sad that every day you hear one story and you think you cannot hear anything more macabre than what you just heard, just read, and then another crime comes along and it's just as sick and macabre as the story you heard yesterday or 5 years ago. But this is what we are surrounded by. Mad people, bitter people, angry people, sick people, deranged people, sociopaths and psychopaths. And we all have quirks about ourselves, odd ways, behaviors, OCD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenic, alternate personality, so on and so forth. But how do we come to cross the threshold of murder? once again, a judge has denied the defense's request to dismiss the grand jury indictment of Bryan C. Kohberger, and cameras have been allowed to go forward in his trial when it's time next year. So I am pleased at that. I hope the family members are pleased. The one family we never hear anything from pertaining to the crime itself, that's the Chapins. And I guess they have chosen to stay out of that conversation. And it may be good, because what's good for one person isn't good for somebody else. Other family members have spoken pertaining to the crime and their thoughts, but the Chapins have remained mum. The only time they speak is when they speak of their son. And it's always a positive light, but it is never about that fateful morning. And some will probably question, well, why not? Why don't they ever talk about it? Maybe they don't want to. Maybe they want to focus on who Mr. Chapin was in life and not in death. And I get that, because he died a gruesome way with those young ladies. So that's possibly why they do not want to discuss the crime itself, Mr. Kohberger, his family, so on and so forth. And as most of you know, the aunt has come out to speak. I may do commentary on that, but you're welcome to go to YouTube Q to get the said information pertaining to what the aunt has to say. And I was listening to someone's commentary about her, and this person was really rough on her, like, make up your mind. You got information or you don't got information. You're shocked, you're stunned that he did it, but you ain't seen him in a while. So I guess maybe they're alluding to the fact that, hey, maybe you didn't know your nephew. He may have been odd, quirky, had drug problems as a young person, but you never assumed that he would be a mass murderer. But who thinks that of their loved one? Whether they're shy, timid, non-combative, which we've seen that in many of these cases, such as the Watts case. Very quiet, timid men one day lash out because it's inevitable. Doesn't have to lead to murder, of course, but they eventually lash out. And that would go the same for a female. You can't keep things pinned in, boggled in. It's got to come out at some point. And sadly for the four, they lost their lives to what I would say a serious pop-off situation. A very sick, ill man, mad at the world, bitter, woman hater. And we've learned with true crime, the motive is never the same. Each case is different. Different people, different circumstances, different motives. But they are the same because they're ill. And they chose this route when they didn't have to. A man killing his family, they've done nothing to him to warrant murder. These kids didn't know this guy, and he tracks them down and kills them. Neither case makes any sense. Because nobody in these situations, whether we knew of them, deserve death. And I believe these children suffered. How could you not? Court will be next year. Kohberger is going to trial. I pray there'll be no more holdups, no more hindrances. Get on with it. We're approaching a year that these children were murdered, and it's time to press forward. No more hangups, no more, running and crying to the judge about this, and this. Just accept your job. Miss Annie, you have a job, you and your dream team. Do your job. And as you also heard in this commentary, Mr. Kohberger is facing the death penalty, which is by firing squad, a new implement in the death penalty structure. And I'm sure for his sake, he is praying not to get the death penalty. That's the reason why they're fighting so hard they were fighting so hard to get that grand jury indictment dismissed. Because they know what's on the table. And they know how these people feel about what he has done. The people out there in Idaho and around the United States and the world. That those kids didn't deserve that. He didn't even know those kids. He had no reason to go in that house, break in, and kill those kids. And then walk around as if he's done nothing. I also read recently that one of the sisters was fired from a job, or the sisters were fired from their jobs. Why? Why were they fired? Because they're still supporting their brother, perhaps? Interesting. Was that the motive for them being fired from their job titles? And naturally, you can't blame people for what their family members do. But if you are vocal in your support of him or her, then that may cause a problem for your employment. And then obviously you're not thinking about keeping a roof over your head. Because imagine getting fired because your brother has been arrested for murdering these kids or any crime. And you are supporting this person publicly. You're saying, oh, I don't think he did it. He didn't do it. The next thing you know, you've lost your job. Where are you going to go now? Who's going to hire you now? Because then they're going to ask the employer, why did you fire him or did they quit? Some employers don't speak on a person's employment. So it's up to the new employer to decide if they want to hire you or not. But let's just say the employer tells the truth. Well, we fired her because she's supporting a man who we believe killed these kids. Imagine that. This is why they want to know about your Facebook pages, social media pages, employers, because they want to see what you're talking about on your pages. And a lot of people have gotten fired because of what they have posted to their social media pages and other apps. Being vocal, their profile is on that page, commenting. It gets back to the employer, and the rest is history. So have they been posting publicly on apps their support of their brother? And that got them fired. And now we have jobs, of course, that you can do from home. Since COVID made it possible for people to work from home, and a lot of jobs came up using the internet. You don't have to go into a regular office to work. That's probably the only thing you could do is work from your house. But you won't be able to represent yourself with your government name because people will realize, oh, that's the sister. Oh, that's the other sister. Oh, that's the mother, father, so on and so forth. Very interesting information. But no one should be judged according to a relative's crimes. But we do know that there has to be a point when you realize evidentiary material is heavy and there's a possibility that your loved one did commit the crime. And maybe these people are in denial because, as I said, and as you heard in this commentary and so many others, you don't know what the state has against Mr. Kohberger. You don't know all the witnesses they have, all the data they've retrieved from the kids' phones and Mr. Kohberger's phones, computers, so on and so forth, what they gathered from the house at his parents' house, what the FBI state police surveyed him doing while in Pennsylvania, the apartment that he lived in, eyewitness testimonies, CCTV footage of him coming and going from Washington to Idaho, the house itself, King Road, people there seeing him coming and going. Anybody could put him at the house lurking about. See, you don't know all that. And I got a feeling you're going to hear a lot of that during trial. Somebody can put Kohberger at that house. A date and a time. And more than one time. Walking about. Lurking about. Because we do not know which entry he entered into the house. Front door, side, glass door, climbed up on a balcony. See, we don't have no idea. We have no idea how he entered. But he got in there. And it will be interesting to hear somebody say, oh yeah, I've been seeing that person walking around the house at night. I've been seeing that person drive by in that car, walking, looking, lurking. See, you don't know. And I think it's scary for anybody who still lives on King Road. Just the thought of knowing, hey, this house next door or up the street, 4 people were butchered, slaughtered for no reason. I would be scared to even have to go by that house to get to my own apartment. Because one building faces their front door, the back of an apartment building faces the front of that house. So that's a person's view from their window, maybe bedroom window, the front of that house. Imagine that. The person who lives next door, right next door, that heard or got the recording of Xana whimpering. That's a lot to swallow and take in. Hey, ma'am, can we look at your CCTV footage? Sir, can we look at your recordings, your camera work? Oh, yeah, sure. And then you hear that in the wee hour, in the still of the night, the quiet of the night. No dogs barking, no children playing, nobody's arguing, fussing, laughing, hollering, screaming, just a faint whimper of someone you now know fought for their life and lost the fight to a madman and died with their boyfriend also. And then their other 2 friends died in the top floor bedroom in the same bed. That's a lot to digest. And you were comfortable in your house, in your room, your couch, wherever you were that fateful morning, and had no idea, hopefully, what was transpiring feet away at the King Road house. And now you have to wake up every day in that same house, coming and going, looking out the window, passing by this macabre scene, helter-skelter murder box sitting next door to you. I'd be scared shitless. And that old saying that the dead tells no tales, maybe. Maybe not. But that's scary to know you live next door to a horrific crime scene. And I'm sure a person is paranoid of hearing and seeing things at night living next door. And also the apartment adjacent to that house that sits up on the hill. That would be scary. Driving by that house to go up that hill and that eyesore is still sitting there. And I'm sure many people on that street want that house gone. I get it. But let's let those 12 members of a jury get a chance to go in, walk that house, see the house, walk the property, get a layout of the street, get an idea of how the perpetrator entered the house, navigate it inside, out, the perimeter, the streets, and use their deduction how this crime transpired. And then you tear it down, the university. And that was very noble of the owner to gift the house to the school because he didn't have to do that. Ms. Taylor seems very confident in her defense of Mr. Kohberger. As I said, she had another young lady sitting at the table while they were in court. But the judge has denied the request of a dismissal of the grand jury indictment against Mr. Kohberger. And I'm very thankful that he did that. I'm also thankful that cameras will be allowed in the courtroom so we can see his demeanor and you can continuously watch that right jaw clench up. And let me tell you, when he smiled at the dark-haired girl sitting in the middle, chills went up my spine. went up my arms because it's the same fake smile he gives old Annie Taylor. Half-baked. And I would be scared shitless sitting next to Kohberger. And I'd be scared walking out of the courtroom. I'd be scared driving my car home. And I'd be scared putting the key in my door knowing I'm sitting next to a man, male, who has butchered 4 kids. Don't know what else he's done. And knowing also that there's somebody else out there in this wicked world that thinks and navigates as Kohberger and will continue to navigate like Kohberger. That's a lot to carry out after sitting next to him. I could see one having nightmares just as a defense attorney, sitting next to him. The fear that he could get loose, break out, because anything is possible. And I'm not claiming that, but I'm just saying their position, I don't see how they could sit next to him. And I know it's the law that a defendant has the right to counsel, but he's not your everyday fuck up. He slaughtered 4 kids for no reason. And now you're going to court sitting beside him, talking to him and navigating his case to try to get him off. And I must say, Annie has been doing her damnedest to get him off. And I thank God the judge said, no, ma'am. He is going to trial, whether you like it or not, whether he likes it or not. He most definitely deserves his day in court. And I doubt that he will take the witness stand. He's going to allow all that evidence to pour into that courtroom, knowing he can't fight none of it. None of it. How will the witness feel pointing Mr. Kohberger out that he's the person that passed her threshold on that fateful morning? Miss Dillon, we haven't heard much about you lately or your other roommate. Are you still in school? Are you still enrolled? Do you work, have a job, still living at home? Where does the other young lady live? Does she still attend school virtually, work, have a job? What are these ladies doing? I'm curious. And will you testify that Kohberger is the guy that walked by you that fateful morning? He is the guy you saw with a mask on, bushy eyebrows, and had tunnel vision and walked out of what? The glass door. So I'm assuming he entered through that same door. Very scary. Be very careful of your surroundings, especially women. Be very careful what you post to social media, your comments to social media, the people you befriend on social media, how you carry yourself on social media, visually, if you get my drift. Don't invite the devil in. Because, see, a lot of people are inviting the devil in through social media. And a lot of them like it. Let me make that clear. And then they cry wolf when the shit jumps off. And in the end, you have nobody to blame but yourself if you're out here doing crazy, radical things on social media to draw attention. You might want to think twice. There's nothing wrong with posting selfies, live streams, showing that you're at a party or function. But if you're out doing something that's just outrageous behavior just to get some likes and views, maybe you shouldn't do that. Because as you see, these kids were just being themselves, assumingly, posting their daily events. We have not heard that they were saying anything derogatory to Mr. Kohberger. to draw him into their peripheral, but he found them. That's the point. He found them, and he hunted them down like animals, and he killed them in their own damn house. You can't get any worse than that, because your house is sacred. And if you can't feel safe in your house, your home, apartment, you are not safe anywhere. That's my content for this evening. Thank you all so much for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. Happy Halloween to everyone. My movie suggestion for tonight is Madman. I'm posting a movie every day up until Halloween for your enjoyment. For those of you who like scary movies, this is a 40-year-plus scary movie. I believe it came out in 81. It's a movie I saw when I was a child, and I finished it this morning late. So if you want to mosey on over to my community board, it's posted to my community page, and other scary movies are also posted. Please take the polls pertaining to Chris Watts and his family. I have other polls up pertaining to him. And I also posted maybe 2 questions on my community board pertaining to Mr. Kohberger. And I'm going to read you those results, and then I'm going to check out of here. Thank you all so much for joining me. Okay. Seven o'clock, UT plays University of Kentucky, University of Tennessee. For those of you who are Kentucky fans or Tennessee fans, the game starts at, I believe, 7 o'clock, 7 or 7:30. So that's where I will be after I come off this live stream, getting ready for the Tennessee-Kentucky game. Go UT, go Vols, amen. All right, everybody. Defense alleges state improprieties. So should the judge have dismissed Bryan Kohberger's grand jury indictment? 11% of you said yes. 83% of you said no. 6% said not sure. 18 votes. Cameras will be in the courtroom of Bryan Kohberger's trial. Did the judge make the right decision? 100% said yes. 26 votes. Thank you all so much for joining me. And please take the polls below that pertaining to the Watts, Shanann. I've got some other content post up pertaining to Shanann. Did she drive Chris to murder her children? 86% of you said no. 5% not sure. 9% said yes. Very interesting. Is he remorseful of the crime? 5 years have passed. 8% of you said yes. 82% said no. 11% said not sure. Very interesting. And I also asked you about Ms. Kessinger. Do you think she's in the witness protection program? 44% yes. 56% said no. 52 votes. Did she know of the plot to kill the family? Or did she help in any way? She knew only, 39%. She helped, 61%, 23 votes. Thank you for your time, everybody. You have been listening to The Vault XL.